before I get too excited about this project, I need to do a reality check and find out if I could even get anywhere close to getting a loan for this project. I do not have the ability to cash flow this completely. Someday, maybe that'd be amazing, but the first one I just can't. So I am putting together a list of questions to ask potential lenders and find out if I can even do it, and if I can, what the terms are for that. So over here, I've got my financing document kind of put together here, and I'm going to break this up into two parts. So part one is volume, like call a bunch of banks, call a bunch of credit unions, lenders in my area, and even ones that are outside of my area. I see various national companies offering owner builder loans with dubious track records on Reddit. But anyway, I'm going to find out who I should talk to more thoroughly. That's like step one. So establish a pass fail, like a thumbs up, thumbs down, and get the contact of the person that knows more information. So the first couple questions are going to be based around, is this even possible? The most important one is, do you offer construction loans? So construction loans are not something that all lenders will offer. Even if they offer mortgages, it's just a bit more of a specialty product because it involves more focus on the underwriting and more of like a team to manage that at the lender side of things. So that's an important one. And if they do offer construction loans, it's way more likely that they're going to offer it only to people that use a licensed builder. It's actually quite amazing to think that any bank, which is usually pretty risk averse, or lending institution, would even loan out money at such a grand scale for such a complex project to people that are not licensed. So I'm going to be kind of blown away if I can find this, but people do find this type of product out there. So I'm looking forward to finding it as well. Now, if they don't have this, I'm going to also make sure to ask, okay, do you know anyone that does do this product? Because they might have worked for a different bank or something like that, and maybe we can find a good resource from that. Secondarily, the most important one is, do you require a licensed general contractor, or can I manage the build myself? I've heard reports online of various lenders saying that, yeah, they'll do that, but you need to have construction experience. Some people say that could be anything. Maybe you worked in a Habitat for Humanity build. So I look forward to finding out what those requirements are. If they still are answering yes to these questions, I'm going to ask a bit more about single close and construction loans that convert to permanent. So what I have seen before is there'll be one close, the build will progress, and then it'll convert to a permanent mortgage after that certificate of occupancy and certain checklists are completed. Now, why is that a big deal? It's for anyone that's ever bought a home before. Closing costs are significant. They're like, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. They are very expensive, and you want to ideally close once, unless the math works out such that closing twice makes sense. There could be scenarios where that we need to know it going into it. The other question is about equity and loan to value, or in this case, it's loan to cost. So people that have bought homes before, it's LTV, loan to value. So there's a value of this house you're buying, but in the construction world, it's kind of LTC, loan to cost. So if the cost of the land and the build is estimated at $600,000, there's going to be a certain threshold that you might have to hit. Like, you can only borrow 80% or 70% or 90%. We'll have to find out what that percentage is so we can start to understand, like, what's the down payment situation look like. After that, I just want to know who do I need to talk to? Who's their loan officer? Who knows all of the information? Because I have a lot more questions than this. I just need to get their contact information so I can email or call them with more information. And of course, if they have any like ready to go documentation or checklists for what the process looks like, I would love to see that too, so I can try to learn as much as I can without having to hound their staff for questions they probably answer all the time. One of the ethos I have in my head for this project is to try to show up as professional and knowledgeable as possible before kind of talking to people and wasting professionals' time, especially with contractors that have been, doing this forever and like have low patience for kind of newbies like me. So my goal is to arrive as knowledgeable as possible. Same thing with talking to a lender. I want to show up informed, knowledgeable, pleasant, and to not waste people's time. So knowing as much ahead of time with resources that exist already, PDFs they have, I'd love to see that. So this is my first kind of list of things to be prepared. And I haven't even called anyone, by the way. This is just like preparing to call, which sounds a little insane. But again, I'm trying to be overly prepared so that I can come across as professional and can just be easy to work with. I put together this lenders to call list. I am in Washington State, so that's kind of the focus of this video series is people that are in Washington State. It makes sense that you would want to find a local-ish lender because construction varies state to state and even county to county and city to city, obviously. But finding someone that's local will be a lot more likely that they'll be able to lend and convert and support and all the things you need. So one I've heard over and over again online is Timberland Bank. They even have like information on their website about owner builder programs. So that's pretty encouraging. Legacy Group, they're in Bellevue. I don't know, might be a thing that didn't really clarify it. I think it might be more like for licensed builders. And I found a couple more of these. So this is like a national one. This is a national one. This is more of a local one. And this is kind of a regional one. So I'll be calling them up after this to run through all my steps right here. And I'll probably expand the list too as I learn more, but there's not like a comprehensive guide for who does this. And it's not always on their websites if they do this. So it'll be a fun experience. Once all of that is done, the preliminary questions are figured out. I kind of have like a yes, no, or like a maybe checklist. Like, yeah, you could do an owner builder loan, but you need some construction experience. That's not immediately a no. That threshold I would want to learn more about. And so I want to dive into some more advanced questions so I can start to put an understanding together of, will this even work for me? Because if I got a no on all of these from all of these people, I really got to figure out how to get over that threshold, right? I mean, it's one thing to have industry experience and to get into this, or to have a lot of track record of building homes, but how does someone get from 0 to 1 in this industry? It seems opaque to me, and I hope to find that out and share it on this channel. So after I've talked to them, I'm going to be going a bit deeper on some subjects with these lenders that seem most likely, right? I want to find out what I can afford roughly, so I know like, okay, what kind of land, what kind of building size, what kind of location I should be able to start working on this first build for. And secondarily, I want to show up with a rock solid application. So I'll be applying for a loan probably within a year. And I want to know, like, that's my outcome, right? I need to have all these documentations together, presumably all these bids and plans and timelines, all this information needs to be ready to go. So knowing from day one what that application packet has to look like will be so much easier as I go through my normal steps of researching this project to be able to just fill in all those application things that the bank wants so that it's ready to go and it's rock solid, a great application. So I want to know what the requirements are. That'll be a big deal. Okay, first category kind of loan types. So something I mentioned earlier, there's like single close, which is pretty sweet because, again, that one close cost, construction to permanent. The other one is, again, loan to cost. What's that ratio? How can I calculate my budget? And of course, what's the required down payment? And is there an equity contribution from like land if I own that already? Or what can I use as collateral? So those are all the questions I'd love to hear more about with their loan types. With land, another major question to clear out is going to be, can I finance the land with the construction? And it seems to be that's slightly more common from research I've done. But it sounds like there could be benefits to owning the land ahead of time too, especially if you own it outright. So I wanted to ask a little bit more about, do they see it closing easier one way versus the other? And just any other experience, kind of open-ended question, like what are their thoughts on this and what they've seen work well in the past? And what if I have land that I have like a owner finance term on, like I bought from a owner and they're financing it and I've got still equity in it, but it's not fully paid off, so it's not owned outright. And of course, would the land be used to reduce the down payment? So if I have, let's say, $50,000 of equity because I purchased a plot of land outright and it's still worth that, could I use that as part of my down payment to reduce the cash down payment? So great questions to find out the answers to there. Okay, another big one. I need to see if like a sanity check here will work. I'm self-employed somewhat, and so just like piling on all these reasons not to lend to me. Self-employed, never done construction before, so I need to kind of talk to the lender and find out like before I go down this path, waste your time, my time. Roughly, will this work out? Here's my finances. Can we go through this really quick and just be like, yeah, that probably will work. Let's do due diligence, or like, no, get out of here. Just other kind of questions is like, if this is a local institution, should I just be moving my personal accounts there if we're going to move forward with this? Like, should I start establishing a banking relationship? I know banking is a very relationship-based business. Another open-ended question I'm going to go for is, what makes up a strong application? Just kind of like, hey, what do you see working great? What kind of applications get approved and underwritten very nicely? What are how do they look? So how can I emulate that, basically? And then, of course, do they require construction experience, professional experience? What can I do to satisfy that requirement, and what the requirement looks like? Of course, getting a lot of no's on these earlier questions might mean I don't ask all these other questions. But anyway, the next ones are kind of about closing costs. This is more about like comparing different lenders. So if I have the luxury of comparing lenders, I'll be able to compare their closing costs and their fee schedule and what the terms of the loans will look like. I don't know if I'm going to have that luxury to compare. I might just be down to like the one or two options that will be even available to me. So yeah, what's a fee schedule? Fee schedule will typically be like a publishable document that they can send you that are like, yeah, this is the closing cost, this is the whatever cost, the title, blah, blah, blah. They have all these requirements and costs and fees that you can use to cross-shop different loans. An important one is it interest-only payments during construction phase? I think that's fairly typical, but there could be different options out there, so good to know about that. And same thing is, what's the interest rate? So perhaps a bank might be really high interest rates during the construction phase. It could be like 20, 30% because it's high risk for them because, again, some Joe Schmo is building this extremely expensive, complex building and they don't have a license. So what are the interest rates? What does that look like? It might even be worth it. If you can get a smaller building that is really well planned and researched out, that can be built on time, maybe the interest payments are absolutely worth it. So that's a good thing to find out. Draw schedules. So what the construction loans typically look like is there will be a draw schedule. So like once you hit certain milestones, like, okay, the foundation's complete and it's been signed off, maybe they need an inspection. Now they can issue more funds to go into your construction account to pay contractors for framing or whatever. So there's like draw schedules. This lender should have their own draw schedule that they can talk about. The other one's going to be construction phase, like how long it can last. Typically, like it seems maybe a year, no more than a year before it has to convert, which means, well, what happens if it isn't converted after a year? What happens there? So I think asking those questions will kind of make you arrive as a more prepared person trying to figure out, like, what are the scenarios here if I can't build in under a year? So what happens if it takes longer than planned? And what are the terms after it converts to permanent? Is this just like a 30-year fixed and like good to go? Or is it like 30-year fixed or 30-year variable and then it like balloons, or like it's a adjustable rate mortgage after 5 years? Like, what is that going to look like? And it might just be like, okay, that's fine and I'll refinance later, but it's good things to know about. And of course, like the questions around documentation, inspections about converting and what that conversion process looks like. Like, do I need a certificate of occupancy first? How does that look? Because ideally you'd want to convert, or I want to convert as soon as possible. So let's maybe like, all right, bare minimum for certificate of occupancy and like screw the yard and the other things that aren't actually requirements. We'll do that later type of decision making to minimize the amount of time in the construction period. And then finally, more like application questions. So how do you evaluate and approve my budget and plans? So that's going to be like a really important thing to understand. Like, this is going to be quite the submission because it's going to have drawings and plans and bids and complexity and cost and budget. It's going to be a really complex plan. So I want to know how it's evaluated and how I can just build it to what they're used to looking at. Other important things to learn about is like what their inspection process looks like at different milestones. And this also kind of goes in hand with the first question, which is, what does a complete application look like? What are all the checklist things do you have in there? Maybe I have this document already, but hopefully they can provide some sort of checklist that we can follow. And finally, it seems like it's pretty common to have a contingency fund. So like 10 to 15%, maybe, okay, the project's gonna be $500,000, but we need to put $10,000 of that into, or like, let's say 5,000, I don't know. There's probably some percent that they would want. And we got to figure out what that is and make sure it's built into the budget, because things are going to cost more than you expect. Like, it's just how that works. And if they don't, then great, you got savings, but it's typically going to cost more. All right. So those are the questions I need to go through with my lender and ask and find out about. My lender, assuming I can find them. I think they're around. And once I've done that, I'm going to record a little bit more information about how that goes. And then the next big kind of question for me to understand is this whole like land order of operations. So I want to explore that next, like the pros and cons of owning your land outright beforehand, or trying to make it all happen all at once for land and plans and so on. So that's going to be my next topic to explore. But I'll post another video about how this conversation with lenders goes, and we'll probably learn a lot together. Thank you.